Hillbilly Elegy, directed by Ron Howard, written by Vanessa Taylor, starring Amy Adams, Glenn Close, Gabriel Basso, and Haley Bennett, tells the story of a young boy named J.D. Vance who grows up in Ohio and works his way to Yale Law School, only to be pulled back one day by an urgent phone call from his family and forcing him to reconcile the past with his mother Beverly and Mama. This film, while entertaining throughout its whole runtime, has a lot of problems. The production design is not good. There are a lot of things that don't belong here. The sport cards are from the 80s, those Joe Montana ones. The sport card store doesn't look like a sports card store. The calculator is from the 2000s. The Jansport backpack that JD wears is from the 2010s. And it isn't really a poor kid's backpack. I don't think it was a very representation. Jansport's usually one for like middle class kids. That's assuming a lot, but I'm going to stick to that anyways. My more legit complaints is that the cinematography was not great. There were a lot of shots where there was a limited depth of field, and shots would go out of focus for many moments, and a character would have to like walk into the depth of field to be ordered to be in focus, and so for a lot of time they weren't. There was a lot of constant panning, which was a big distraction. Like the camera felt like it didn't know what to focus on. A lot of this seems revolved around the character of Beverly, who's played by Amy Adams, the mother, who stays calm at first, but then because of the drugs she takes ends up being wild. And I think that whole movie tries to reflect that. I don't know if that was intentional, but it definitely felt that like that in the camera movement. A lot of shots are still in certain parts, and then in some parts it's just panning all the time. A character that I did really like was Lindsay, who is a really useless character and is probably the most unbelievable. Like, I think the performance that Haley Bennett gives as Lindsay is the best in this movie, but her character feels wasted as she isn't in most of the third act. When everything that important that will change JG's life is happening, it's like his sister isn't part of it at all. It feels really fabricated there. I don't love the flashbacks when JD's does something. They aren't very good. The actors who played him are very good. I think they're great, especially the adult one. The kid definitely could have been a bit better. He didn't really feel as emotional as the situations he was in. I kind of have problems with this character because immediately off the bat he claims that in his voiceover that he loves Kentucky.
I say Ohio because that's where I live most of my life, but that's only part of my story. Ask me where I feel most at home. That's the hill country of Jackson, Kentucky. But
then the only scene we see of him in Kentucky is him getting bullied for like being an out-of-state kid by these boys. It's like,
yeah, get him. Hey, he's coming up. Go back to Ohio, boy. Keep him under.
First of all, is it possible to be that racist that you're like, oh, he's from Ohio, let's mess with him and push him under the water? And then JD's like, oh, I love this place. I love getting pushed underwater. I love doing those kinds of things. But my biggest issues with this film are the scene progression and the pacing. This film often goes from being fast and entertaining to very calm. And I think that's, again, a reflection of Amy Adams' character, who is a calm and more normal person at times. But then, even without drugs, sometimes just launches into a tantrum over the smallest things, and sometimes that is driven by her drugs and sometimes that's not. It just feels like that's a part of her character. In some of the most dramatic scenes you feel moved at first, especially this one really tragic one where Amy Adams is in a panic. I think that scene shows her best acting. She oversells some of her scenes in the third act, but overall I thought she was good. But in that scene where she's in a panic, the camera doesn't know where to go. It doesn't know what to focus on. Like, we see her in distress, and we focus on that, and then we focus on her arguing with Lindsay. But the camera felt like it never could focus on the most important parts of what was going on. I could never focus on a certain issue. It had to do two things at once, which you can't really do. It wasn't showing split screen. It couldn't work that way. A lot of the conversations are just fragmented, and the dialogue need to be written a lot more over, because at first, they're talking about nothing. They're just having normal conversation. And all of a sudden, it's a serious conversation out of nowhere. Many of the responses in the dialogue, don't make sense to me. Glenn Close, despite giving a pretty good performance here, isn't given enough to work with to have a shot to win. I don't think she's definitely not getting an Oscar win from this, because the dialogue is just so fragmented. All the clips from the trailer felt like they were specifically for the trailer, especially that Terminator one. It's they showed that, so yes, I like Terminator, let me watch this movie. It doesn't mean anything. That stuff about being a good Terminator or a bad Terminator or neutral, it doesn't make any sense. The more important thing is that she said at first she was bad and now she's good. Her character, despite apparently having a rough past with her husband, but also being crazy because despite him drinking, she also tried to burn him alive, apparently. Which is just insane to me. The story's idea about trying to tell about the struggles of white working class, it's not that bad. I mean, if you think about it, a show like Breaking Bad highlights that same kind of thing. Both JT and a character like Walter White don't have health insurance and don't have the wealth to take care of their families. But unlike Breaking Bad, this movie is just too fast and doesn't know what it is. And I think that's a lot because of the source material. Because I think the only way this became a bestseller is simply because of what it's talking about. It just came at a time where people wanted stories about the white working class, and it wasn't necessarily about how well it was written. Because, the screenwriter isn't bad. Vanessa Taylor helped Guillermo del Toro write The Shape of Water. That movie won Best Picture. And yeah, that's definitely it's not a masterpiece of writing, but it's good. Anyone who Guillermo del Toro helps to write should be good. But I felt like she was definitely rushed on this one. She was given no time to write this thing. I've seen so many other movies tell autobiographical stories, like The Farewell, Honey Boy, and Lady Bird, which tell deep and moving, beautifully told stories. And they all feel honest, they all feel semi-autobiographical. This one, despite being almost completely autobiographical, apparently, didn't feel like that at all. It felt like a Hollywood fabrication. It didn't feel honest. The final kick for me is something Lady Bird, despite, being kind of poor and in high school, didn't struggle with having to buy an $84 calculator.
Your homework done?
No.
Why the hell not?
I don't have the right calculator.
Well, go get the damn thing.
It costs $84.
But an $84 calculator just, that pushed me over the edge and just made me for sure not love this movie. But like I said, it's entertaining, but it's not very well written and fragmentally shot. And I'm going to give this movie a 5.5 out of 10. It's better than Vice, though.
Back in the 90s, I was in a very famous team.